Thank you all so much for joining us. Welcome to Highline 9 Galleries. My name is Christina Maxwell. I'm the executive director of these galleries. So to explain where you are, Highline 9 was developed in 2018 by the Related Companies, which is the largest private real estate developer in the US, and they originally designed this to be sort of a permanent art fair, where galleries from all over the world would come in and show art. I took over the galleries in 2020 during COVID, quite an opportunity for reinvention. And I had a background as a singer and as an actress, and we decided to make this place something different than what all of the other galleries in Chelsea are offering. I wanted this to be a universal stage where we're telling global stories, stories that are beautiful, stories that sell beautiful commercial art, but also stories that are challenging and that change us as viewers, whether they make us a little bit more curious, whether they make us confront a truth about ourselves or a truth about the world that we live in. So part of what I do as executive director is seek out these stories and these storytellers that can be part of the fabric here of Highline 9 Galleries. And then we add on a lot of music with the New York Phil, the Met Opera, the Brooklyn Ballet, and all types of different forms of art. Everything from technology with NFTs to filmmaking, to dance, to live painting. So when this project came across my desk, we thought this was a perfect fit, right on cue. Thank you so much. Speaking of, I would love to introduce Mina, who has spearheaded this amazing project with her team. And she and Shafali and their entire team were here until 2 a.m. last night to make sure that you got to have an incredible experience today. But I would love to welcome you all here. We're so grateful to have this beautiful and meaningful project and discussion in our galleries. And if you're welcome as well, of course, to reach out to Mina to find me this evening if you're interested in getting involved at Highline 9, whether as an exhibitor or hosting your event here or just coming to be a visitor to enjoy the art. So tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing the man who will be running our panel this evening. And after the panel tonight, feel free, please, to explore the corridor to see the variety of different exhibits, to enjoy more cocktails, I believe, yes? Yes, to enjoy more cocktails as well. But in the meantime, it is my pleasure to introduce our host for this evening, Asid Lalji. So, Asid comes from an extensive background in advertising. He told me that he was one of the original Mad Men in New York City. He did indeed. He is now a cultural producer. He is the curator of the Royal Opera House in Mumbai, which is the only Royal Opera House located there. He is also the CEO of Avid Learning, which is a large public programming platform that presents arts and cultural programming. So Avid Learning is also a collaborator for the exhibit, which you all got to see earlier, and for tonight's very exciting opening event. He is currently based in Mumbai, but we are lucky to steal him back for a few days and to hear from him this evening. So without further ado, I welcome your host, Asid.
Thank you, Christina, for those kind words and partnering with this show. We couldn't have asked to be in a better venue than this. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Techni Disruptors. The show has been conceived through the lens of urbanism and a post-colonial gaze. It engages Indian futurism, indigenous technologies, and future-forward aesthetics while retaining the notion of cultural plurality. The 3-week-long event with rotating exhibitions features works imagined with the most future-forward technologies of our times, from brand new minted collections of NFTs from the global south, with the critical need to strengthen South-South collaboration. The exhibition will commence with the opening panel of the Jaipur Literature Festival, New York City edition, titled State of the Contemporary, NFTs in the Global South. Presented by Engendered in association with Avid Learning, Polygon, Infinite Objects, Highline 9 Gallery, Jaipur Literature Festival, and the list goes on. JLF was launched in 2006 and is considered the world's largest literary festival, and it's a privilege to be the opening chapter of the 2022 New York edition. The literary world has seen the birth of crypto writers leveraging NFT technology to fund their writing, and some of the noteworthy examples are American writer Blake Butler could not find a publisher for his novel Decade. In 2021, he dropped an NFT of his novel and has resulted in it being published, written, monetized generously. Tech entrepreneur and founding partner of India Internet Fund, Anirudh Suri, commemorated the launch of his first book with a limited edition NFT collected cards. Recently launched was a phygital collection of New York-based Michelin star chef Vikas Khanna's book, Sacred Tastes of India. Teamwork Arts, to celebrate their 15-year journey of JLF, plans to launch an NFT collection later this year. The collection will be emblematic of the festival's star-studded journey and its openness to technology adoption. To kickstart this evening, please welcome the Managing Director of Teamwork Arts and the organizer of the iconic JLF globally, Sanjoy Roy, to tell us more about what we have in store for us.
Thank you so much, Asad. Madeline, Vipul, Pratik, ladies and gentlemen, the artists. Thank you all so much for gathering here today. When I walked in, I saw Veer Munshi's The Burning House, and I'm sure many of you engaged with this when you walked into the gallery. In many ways, it sort of embodies what we're seeing around us today. There's violence, there's hatred, there's war, there's divisiveness, there is a lack of empathy and understanding, there's zero love. And much of this is because artists and people like you in the room here don't have the voice that we should have. Arts is one of the few things that opens windows. It opens windows to other philosophies, to other histories, to other ways of thinking, of being, of love and empathy. And it is really that window that allows you to push back on ignorance, ignorance that leads to fear, fear that leads to violence, and all that we are seeing today. As all of you know, Moina Mukherjee is really in many ways a disruptor herself. She is a force of nature. And then when you take her and you find Asid Lalji, who is the other force of nature, and you put them together, it's nuclear fission. So it's absolutely wonderful that we're here today in this amazing gallery with such an incredible collection of art. And it's not just in this gallery, across this entire area, there's so many wonderful galleries and exhibitions, and we have so many wonderful artists collected here today. And I really say that the arts is what we need to look at much more, not just to understand what we have around us, but be able to celebrate humanity. If we celebrate humanity, perhaps we will stop hating each other, hating each other's positions, hating each other for our religions, for our caste, for our color, for our divide, for our nationalities, and so much more. It is the responsibility not just of artists or governments or people in power. It is the responsibility of each one of us in this room, each one of us who understand the importance of humanity, to come together as one voice. And that's what I think Moina and Asad and all of the wonderful artists here, Irana, Munshi, Seema, Nisar, who's here, Orun, who's dedicated her life at the IAAC so many years, of course, and Mr. Kaul, who's taken it over, all of you. We need to work together. If we don't, we will continue to see around us the hatred and violence that will consume us all. It's not about as far away as Ukraine. It's not about Salman Rushdie being attacked somewhere else. Each and every one of us is at risk. And it is our collective responsibility to push back on hatred. Celebrating today and the opening of this evening's festival and collection, we need to find different ways to get our narrative out. A narrative of hope, a narrative of expression, a narrative where stories become the core of everything that we're doing. Go back into the past, into that comfort where your parents or your grandparents or your aunts and uncles told you a story and drew you in to a different world. May have been a world of fantasy, of love, of adventure, of space, of science, of technology, of invention and innovation. It is these worlds that we need to discover. Today we are here on this one earth, one planet. There is no other option. Elon Musk may take us off into outer space. For how many people? You can't live out there. What is it that we need to do collectively? Can we find a narrative that makes climate crisis sexy so that everybody, every ruler, leader, policymaker, and each one of us collectively understands and realizes that we have to work together to be able to save the only planet that we know. And again, this is what the arts can present. This is an opportunity, a way of expression. So Moina, Asad, this wonderful gallery, thank you all so much for doing what you do. To every writer and every speaker, irrespective of your political considerations and your points of view, thank you for continuing to speak and expressing yourselves. To every gallery owner and each of you who promote the arts, thank you for doing what you do. We know how difficult it is. So enjoy the rest of the evening, but I do hope that having walked around today's exhibition, tarry a while in front of Veer's burning house. It is a semblance of our earth and our world today. And it's not somebody else who's done it. We have all been responsible for the way the earth is today. Let's take responsibility and move forward. Thank you all so much.
That's a tough act to follow and fall down on. Thank you, Sanjoy. You know, art and technology have been crossing paths since the time of Leonardo da Vinci. In New York, the first instance of integrating visual arts with technology dates back to the 60s, when a team of artists paired with scientists and engineers from Bell Laboratories to create experiments in art and technology, EAT. It was a collective to promote collaboration between arts and new technology involving innovations of that era. The emerging facets of technology over time have brought us varied forms of art, creating a more inclusive environment, and NFTs are the latest product of this continuous churn between art and technology. The fusion has given birth to diversified stakeholders and also increased the affordability for artists by creating a plethora of tools. In 2020, the NFT market was valued at 100 million. By mid-2022, it increased 30 times to 3 billion. As the real world and the digital world synchronize, phygital art is the next big trend in NFTs, the celebration of technology and tradition together. Artist experiments like Damien Hirst's The Currency was a referendum of NFTs versus traditional art. Every day, the first 5,000 days by artist Mike Wilkelman, known as Beeple, created the NFT craze, which erupted in the 69.3 million sale at Christie's, co-bought by one of our panelists, Anand Venkateshwaran, who unfortunately is on a flight but was going to join us remotely. So it's our loss, but he was supposed to be here. Works by senior Indian artists like M.F. Hussain are going to be dropped in an NFT by Sotheby's in October of 2022. Last October, our panelists, Raghava KK's NFT, La Petite Mort, part of the Orgasm Project, fetched 94,500 at the Boundless Space. Developed in conjunction with data scientists Harshit Agarwal and Maina Mukherjee as the curatorial advisor, both present physically at our panel today. Artists from the global south are disrupting, and including Maina is also disrupting, we're doing that, inventing, redefining new paradigms and expressions with powerful meaning and establishing themselves in the global art map. To tell us more, I'd like to invite two of our very, very special guests, co-founder Tribeca Film Festival, Disruptor Foundation, Craig Hatkoff, and collector, founder, ex-fellows, We the Planet, Kunal Sood, to give us a few opening remarks. Welcome then, guys.
Hi everyone, I'm Kunal Sood. This is Craig Hatkoff, in case you thought he was Kunal Sood, and I was Craig Hatkoff. So, I was going to say something very different, but I think, inspired by what Sanjoy just said, I'm going to speak to a problem I see in the world here and now. Last year, I bought my first NFT, and it was the best and the worst experience of my life. But the truth is, I still haven't got that NFT. So at that point, I realized that we're in a world that we don't know what's happening. And the greatest problem we have is the problem of being bystanders. You see, there's a circle of, vicious circle that we call the perpetrator, the victim, the bystander, and then there's a question mark, right? Who becomes the hero. And the problem we have here and now is that we're all bystanders. We're bystanders of our own lives. And Raghava taught me this. The greatest asset we have is in the NFT world is that you are your greatest NFT, meaning you are non-fungible by nature, by form, by design. But what's more important is that it's not just about us as human beings. When I started We the Planet, I did it because I feel like we the people have failed. We failed ourselves, we failed our countries, we failed the planet. And now we're going to fail the universe because, like you said, Sanjoy, we're going to Mars and the moon, and we've already got space debris out there. And what's more important is that we focus on something larger than ourselves. And that's something that is at the core of this NFT movement. We hear all the time how the metaverse is going to transform our world, and NFT is going to revolutionize how art is going to be experienced, and people are going to change their lives, and we're going to give so much opportunity. But what I see is people are actually doing the opposite. They're putting money in, hoping that it becomes a beanstalk, like a magic beanstalk, and sitting down like bystanders, hoping that it'll become, make them rich. That's what I've seen. That is the mess we have created. And if anyone wants to disagree with me, please, by all means, come up here and refute me. But I think we have a problem that stems from greed and then becomes a bigger problem of being bystanders. You see, the perpetrator, the victim, and the bystander, don't be a perpetrator, Try not to be a victim, but never, ever, ever be a bystander. Because the bystander is the fulcrum. It is the solution that we have from going from being perpetrators or victims or even bystanders to becoming heroes. And I think here and now, with this NFT revolution, especially in the Global South movement, we have 1.3 billion, or has it reached 1.4 yet? I don't know if we've reached that milestone yet, but we are 1 billion strong, plus strong in India. And I think if we all started being our own heroes, and then going beyond ourselves and becoming the heroes of not just our journeys, of a collective journey, I believe that art can save the world, But more important than art, I believe that once we activate around something larger than ourselves, coming together, having each other's backs, this is something that is so important today. The most important lesson we can learn from this art world of, the NFT world is to really come together and have each other's backs. That's one of the things that I'd like to see happen with this revolution that's taking place here and now in the art world, in the NFT world. And what's more important than the metaverse is our innerverse. You see, because ultimately the metaverse is a direct reflection of your inner journey and your inner state. To me, that is the most important journey we can embark on here and now. It's to take that art and turn it inward so that we can have that inner transformation that then becomes the outward impact we want to see manifest in our world. And all of you here, Raghava, Maina, Maina is, I have a joke at the United Nations because I do summits with the UN. We're the unsung heroes that do all the hard work for many people to come and congratulate each other. So if you could take a stand, Maina, because I would like you to stand up and be recognized. We know, because Craig actually founded the Tribeca Film Festival as well as the Disruptor Awards in New York, that it takes more than just us. It takes a village. It takes the Raghavas. It takes the Ashas. It takes the Sanjoys. It takes the Asids. It takes all of us to come together and become this superorganism. And if we can just keep that would be such a gift. If we can have each other's backs to build not just a better world, but a better future for the planet, for our next generation, and for each other. And I think that would be the greatest gift we could give the movement of the NFTs, of the metaverse, of the crypto world, and just the world at large, the world we live in. I feel like the greatest gift we can give each other is find the moral courage, build the compassion necessary to make the impossible possible and come together. And with that, I have the distinct privilege to introduce my dear friend and ally, Craig, who has done nothing but that for the past 21 years, since 9/11, when he started the Tribeca Film Festival. It was started on one of the darkest days of this city. If you remember, in 2001, I don't know where you guys were, but I was actually late for class. I was going to Parsons School of Design. I was in my second year. I was like, shoot, something just happened, because I was really far away and I could see the two towers burning. And I saw the second plane hit, but I didn't think it was a plane, because who would have ever even in their mind's eye imagined? All I knew is that I was late for class and I had to go into class. And I saw this explosion before I went in. Then I went in and I told them I saw something happened, it exploded. They laughed at me for some reason, because they also probably couldn't understand and know what I was speaking about. But by the time I came back out, they were gone. There were no buildings left. And for the first time in my life, I felt dread and anger. But I tried to translate and transform those feelings into faith and compassion. And I think Craig did that in a magnitude that I just did it for myself so that I could live with the pain. He actually took it and created something that was larger than himself with his wife. And they created the Tribeca Film Festival, which was all about bringing life back to a place that was ridden with fear. Because one of my favorite quotes, and I'll end with this, is that courage is not the absence of fear, but the judgment that something more important, like love or compassion, matters. And the brave may not live forever, but the cautious do not live at all. So here's a living example of how someone who took that bravery and that courage and helped us all dream again. And with that, Craig, I'd love to invite you on to share with us. Thank you, everyone, for having us. It's been such an honor. Such amazing people in the audience. You should look at everyone around you and become friends. So, that's the point, right? Not just the speakers, not just the panelists, but all of you here. matter and can make the impossible possible together. Thank you. If anyone here is allergic to stream of consciousness presentations, we'll give you a moment to leave the room. I found out I was going to be giving, I guess what I'm going to call a nano presentation or a nano keynote. And I want to, just with a few things, when Kunal mentioned bravery, we weren't brave when we started Tribeca, we were oblivious. And there's a big difference. When you know too much, you'd say, I would never, in a million years, what on earth were we thinking? But when I heard the title that this was NFTs and the Global South, I said, this is perfect for me. For me, South is south of Canal Street. Little did I know there was a slightly bigger global twist to this. The other problem is I thought I'd throw together a little 5 or 6 page visual presentation, only to find out we weren't really doing little decks. So I'm going to ask you all to pretend that this is a whiteboard when I get to this part of my presentation in a moment or two. But I want to start with one of the most important things, and Sanjoy, you opened with the words story and narrative. And to me, the biggest challenge that we are going to have, whether it's Web3, crypto, blockchain, Ethereum, DAOs, is that we're not speaking a common language yet. The lexicon is not there. And if I were to ask 4 people to define Web3, I'd probably get 8 answers. And that standardization and simplification will be absolutely necessary to scale in what I actually had the benefit of working with the father of disruptive innovation theory, Clayton Christensen. Anybody out here know Clay's work, Innovator's Dilemma? And what it really means is you start at the low end. So for example, anybody use Skype circa 2009, 2010? And in a simple word, it was pretty shitty, but it was good enough. And that's the key to true disruption. And so I was very impressed by a diagram that I'm going to have to try and replicate because I don't have my slide, we don't have a whiteboard. But it may bring things together. But you've all, DeFi, okay? Everybody, I think everyone knows, decentralized finance. But there are 3 basic models, and the most important breakthrough, in my humble opinion, there are 4 or 5 people who were really the godfathers of the internet. The one who I have sort of picked up on is a gentleman by the name of Paul Barron. And if you were to look at the original 1962 white papers on the birth of the internet, he had a diagram which I must think about 150 times a day. And I'm going to try and draw it. You're from Related? They have a great cleaning crew, right? I can, if I put my fingers on. Okay. So imagine the following: a centralized system with. Whoa! Sorry, okay. I have fallen much worse than that. Imagine there's 1 dot and 27 spokes coming out. And so from a network effect, there's really only, if you're connecting dots, there's only 1 dot to connect. Decentralized, now imagine 5 different, I'll call them nodes, and each one has its own spokes. And that's a decentralized system, but a distributed system, there's no centralized or decentralized point of contact. And it is pure network theory. Anybody familiar with Metcalfe's law? Okay, the number of connections is exponential. And so one of the challenges is how do we bring together
let's call it Web3, metaverse, it doesn't matter, but to create not just a decentralized, but a distributed model. And I'm going to give you an example because this is really about art and technology. One of my favorite stories, which, as I say to people all the time, I must have missed school that day, was Henri Poincaré wrote a book. And it doesn't matter if you know Poincaré or what's in the book, except there's something very notable. It's called, it was written in French, and the best translation is called Scientific Hypothesis. And two people who read the book were deeply, deeply inspired by Poincaré in two completely different domains. One was Albert Einstein, and in fact, if you were to read Poincaré's book, you'll actually see something pretty close to E equals MC squared. So here we are, the greatest mind in science, math, physics, etc., who's inspired by a book that also inspired Pablo Picasso, because it was the first time he had even thought about non-Euclidean geometry. And so you have Einstein over here, and you have Picasso over here, and this one guy, Poincaré, created probably more of the most important leaps in intellectual achievement that we can even imagine. So if you thought of the metaverse as this notion of bringing together the digital and the physical, what would have happened if they all had met and could really converse all the time? Now, Einstein did meet Poincaré. Picasso never even had heard of Albert Einstein when he did theory of relativity, and never met Poincaré. So one is this notion of distributed models. And I'm going to give you a quote that you've all heard at least the first two parts, and I added my own, which is, give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him forever. And what I'm going to
they'll feed themselves forever.
Right. And here's the piece that I add. Teach men how to make a fishing net and we'll feed the world. And so this web, if we can figure out how to take the metaverse, which is very similar. Now this little diagram that I almost killed myself trying to show you, if we can reimagine that that's going to be the foundation of the metaverse, where anybody can get to, an 11-year-old who's been reading journals from the National Institute of Health can meet an artist. This is, to me, the potential vision. Now, we have some challenges, which is this is a very powerful tool, but we don't have the use cases that are simply articulated. And the key to true disruption from my mentor, Clay Christensen, is it has to be simple. And so when you're talking to someone who doesn't understand what the metaverse is, step back and think, be a little bit skeptical, because we don't know if this is going to be, tools for fools. We've had anybody remember Y2K? Yeah. What happened? Nothing. So, and value has a completely different meaning. And if you think about the arts and merging together with science, the arts have historically been having, Tribeca Film Festival started off as a not-for-profit, and it was clear to me after about the first 3 meetings, it would never make it as a not-for-profit. So what business models we use, is this going to be, will there be a sustainable commercial model that isn't purely speculative? Because I think early money, the early adopters are in, but we have no basis. Beeple's for $69 million, it could have been 690 million, it could have been 69 cents. We don't have the metrics to come up yet. And I don't want people to think that we're talking about mathematical metrics, but how are we going to measure the impact of what we're doing? But this is a place where, tools are basically, ethically, they're neutral. How we use it, that's where the power comes in. But I think what we really need to understand is that the stories that we tell, and you didn't actually, I thought you were going to throw in, Kunal, when you were talking about the perpetrator, the bystander, and the victim, you kind of wove in the hero. Okay. And for those of you who have, know a little bit about Joseph Campbell, it's the hero's journey. And so what the metaverse represents is an opportunity, and I'm going to give a nod to Kunal, for everybody to become their own hero. Now, you also have a world, if you watch Marvel and what Disney's trying to do with that franchise, anti-heroes are in these days. But we need anti-heroes also. It takes bacteria to make yogurt. So I think I'm going to close with the following. We are in uncharted water. I think bringing together technology and science, everybody's familiar with the notion of STEM. That's all they talk about in Washington and education circles. And the real question is, whatever happened to the capital A, the term STEM, into STEAM? And that big A is the arts. And so before I try and leave the stage without killing myself again, maybe I should ask for questions now. So I have to go. But I think we're at a moment where now I'm going to close with the following, because in my own way, I'm the only person who's built 12 websites that have zero traffic. I can't even get spam. But what I did, so most people here have their iPhone or their Android, and on Instagram. And let me, do I have an extra minute to tell this story, or are we running over? Okay, quickly. Kandinsky is one of my favorite stories, not necessarily favorite artist. He was blown away when he saw Monet's haystacks. And he said, how can you have a painting with no object? And the only way he could tell what the object was when he read the catalog. I think it was 1913 in Moscow. And so if you have your iPhone, and you want, what I have been doing since COVID started, I have an apartment that has a great view of the Empire State Building, and virtually every day and every night, I take pictures of the Empire State Building. And only one person has figured out my hashtag, which is called Monet's Midtown. So if you would look at, doesn't have to be now, hashtag Monet's Midtown, you will see what I thought might become my 400 pictures of each one's different. It's always got the Empire State Building. That's not what it's about. It's about the context. So storytelling isn't really just about the hero. Without context, there's no story. So with that, I'm going to step down carefully and see if I survive. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, guys. I think my job is becoming more and more difficult. Tough acts to follow. But now it brings us to the panel that we were about to start, State of the Contemporary NFTs in the Global South. I'm going to request our panelists to join us one by one as I call out their name and to safely take their seat on this dais. Patty Mays, professor, till recently chair of MIT Media Labs and editor of 3 books. Madeline Pierpoint, Web3 associate MoMA, till recently Lumen Art Projects. I was going to announce Anand Venkateshwaran, but he's not with us. Maina Mukherjee, oh, she's already joined us. Wow. Cultural producer, founder Engendered. Artist KK Raghav and Harshit Agarwal. Brian Trunzo, Metaverse lead, Polygon Studios. And I don't know whether there's enough space for me to go there, or should I just stand and ask you questions from there? All right. So I'm going to start with Maina, who we all have to thank or blame for putting us up here. Maina? You moved from being a successful management strategist in Wall Street to one of the leading curatorial voices now back in India. You've curated internationally at the Lincoln Center, Asia Society. The list goes on and on. You were the co-curator of the largest and most successfully organized Hub India, where 65 Indian artists exhibited their works in November 21, the largest and the most significant conversation that contemporary art from India has had with the Western world in recent times through a 3-museum show. So my another question to you. How has the state of contemporary changed in your experience as a cultural producer, curator? And how is India tracking in the curve in terms of institutional access and support to NFT art?
Thank you, Asad. I'm not going to answer any of those questions. I'm first going to say...
Just pay me and let me go now.
No, I first want to say that I'm back in the city after 10 years. And I've lived here. This is the first city that I called home, and I stayed here for 22 years. And thank you, New York, for having me back. I see so many faces. Thank you to all of you. It really feels like a homecoming. And thank you, Sanjoy, for giving me an opportunity to really bring this together in such a grand way. So having said that, I will now answer your question. I think India's incredibly, what's the word? Resonant with the Global South movement right now. I think, there are multiple voices, there are multiple stages of careers in artists, and it's absolutely a shame of how little of that is seen in the Western world. India's also, according to the person who heads Meta, I keep forgetting his name. Mark Zuckerberg. India is going to be... India is the largest economy of creators that the world is going to see. And technology is just something that's always seen as leading from the West. And so this particular exhibition, Technique Disruptors, is really a chance to kind of show two things. One, the notion of cultural perpetuity and how technology sort of enhances that rather than breaks that. And two, this idea that, the notion of abstraction or the notion of metaphor that exists in the West is often lost in sort of narrative elements of art in the East. And to kind of reverse that, to think about time differently, to think about technology differently, and to think about art differently, and to really expose, two very rich worlds to each other, and a different style of thinking. So that's really what this particular exhibition is about. And how we are doing in the NFT world, Raghava, I've known for 22 years, and we met in New York after he first came, and he was the first Indian to mint an NFT at Sotheby's that also auctioned for an amazing amount of money. And I've been very fortunate to work with Harshit and people like them in the art and technology space, who are really pioneers, thought leaders, and conceptual artists. I've also been really lucky to work with artists who have worked with the idea of resilience and beauty. They work in spaces that are alternative, that do not find space in mainstream gallery areas. And it's really important for me to sort of visibilize those words. The politics of representation are super important to me. That's always been, while I was in New York, I started in Gendered, and that was about gender and sexuality and marginalities. And in many ways, the outliers sort of get a chance to suddenly be mainstream in the NFT world. I'm a technology graduate myself, so it really gives me an opportunity to come full circle back with the arts and bring those two worlds together.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on to Patty in the interest of time. Patty, you're a professor at MIT's program in Media Arts and Science, and until recently were the chair of the Media Lab's Executive Committee. You're one of the trailblazers working at the intersection of human-computer interaction and AI. Research validates the symbiotic relationship between art and technology. And, I prepared a lot of things to ask you, and when we chatted earlier, you said, you've prepared something about AI and art. So why don't you share what you wanted to with this audience?
Thank you. Well, the theme of the evening here is technical disruption and the world of the arts. And I wanted to draw your attention tonight to a recent development, really something that has happened in the last 6 months or so, that I think will in a major way disrupt all of the creative fields, not just the arts. And that is the development of text to image, text to video, text to music, to song, etc. Models, AI models, that are extremely easy to use. Greg talked earlier about the fish metaphor and how the fishing net really enables a whole community to fish. And that is essentially what is being created today. Until a year ago, you had to be a technical person to create art with AI. But there are now new models that are available. For example, DALL-E, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. There's a whole bunch of them. I'm curious how many people have heard of these in the audience. So I encourage everybody, it's too bad we can't show images, but to look at these, because they make it possible for anyone to just create an incredibly beautiful, exciting, original image from text. So these systems are incredibly exciting. You may have learned, some of you may have read that, for example, the first cover of Cosmopolitan was created with one of these, and there was a huge sort of revolt because the designer was just like being lazy, I guess, using one of these systems as opposed to doing the work herself. Recently, in the last couple of days, an image created with one of these AI models won some major state art competition, and then it was revealed that it was created with one of these systems where you simply have to say, create an image in the style of Rembrandt of somebody getting in a cab in New York or whatever. You can mix all of these different eras and cultural references and styles and so on, and out comes something amazing. And on the one hand, this is exciting because anyone can start making incredible images and videos and songs and all of that. On the other hand, it's of course raising a lot of questions. Will a lot of creatives be out of jobs because of this? What about all the images that these models were trained on? They're trained on existing images made by, painstakingly made by artists, and those artists aren't necessarily being credited, or they don't get any like payback or something for their images in a way being used to create these new images. In fact, they have to pay for these tools, to use these tools that have been trained on their images. So there are many issues that are just emerging now about should we regulate the use of these technologies and more. And yeah, that's the main point that I wanted to make, that we've seen sort of the whole NFT revolution in the arts. I think this one is going to be a lot bigger and will really, in a major way, change the creative fields, basically.
Thank you for your comments. In fact, the piece you were referring to, I have it in my notes to talk about it, is a picture generated by Jason Allen in Colorado that won that artist award. And you know, if you really look at it, you know, through the course of the last few decades, when photography came out, it was called art's most mortal enemy in the 19th century. Similarly, in the 20th century, computer-assisted design programs were similarly dismissed by the purists as being too easy and not having too much human interaction. But I'm going to move to Raghava. Apart from being one of the pioneers in the NFT art scene in the global south, you're also the co-founder of an artist collective. Harshit, your work incorporates AI, and emerging technologies. You've been, represented world over in fairs. There's some wonderful work of both of you all out here. If you think about the artist collective, used to be years ago, it was a group of artists who came together, I think like-minded people working together and creating work. Raghava, your artist collective 64x1 focuses on blurring the lines between art criticism, and art education. So you brought together neuroscientists, data scientists, Harshit, and material scientists to create La Petite Mort. So is this the new construct of a collective, one that transcends disciplines, borders, core competencies? And could you both just kind of talk a little and share about your collaborative journey, specifically to that work in the show, Strange Genders, that's part of the Technique Disruptor shows, and it actually adds to the point Madeline has just made. So yeah.
I will let Harshit talk about the specific work, because in many ways, Harshit is the real artist who was looking at the aesthetic encounter. So what I will tell you is I want to say a few things that nobody knows about India. We were the first to publish a future thesis on transcendence for the Sidiocene, a transcendence for the post-human age, from an Indian aesthetic model. We said we are not grandchildren of Kant and Hegel. We are not. We have our own aesthetic. We have our own encounter. And when I try to explain to people what is the West and what is the East, I'm lucky to have spent equal time in both countries and played at the highest level in both countries. In every field you can think of, I have messed around. And for 25 years. And in this room happens to be the most important people of my life. There's so many beautiful people here. But I want to say something important about India and the West, or the East and the West. The West was great at breaking apart the whole and teaching us how the beak, the duck's feet evolved, but we don't know how to bring it back together. And the East offers 100 attitudes to bringing back binaries. It's no longer about binary conflict. We talked about conflict at the core. And you know what's funny? Conflict is the beginning of growth. It turns out, my brother and I studied this very deeply. The guy is an existential, crazy idiot called Karthik Kalyanaraman, Dr. Karthik Kalyanaraman. He has studied everything one can possibly study and had an existential crisis, divorce. I'm going through divorce. We meet in India and we're like, art doesn't make sense. Anto, my 26-year-old friend who's changing India, walks in and says, Rags, this is Mecca? This is the fucking encounter with art? Is this art at the highest? Is this the game we are playing? Is this the power dynamic between the viewer and the artist? And I'm saying, no, baby, this is getting disrupted. And we are changing it. And how are we doing this? Not by fighting it, but by dancing with it. I think the West and the East can finally dance. And these are the spaces I'm interested in. I'm not interested in left versus right. I'm interested in every spectrum of purple, of all the colors and richness between blue and red. And I think that's what we Indians are doing over here. And what have we taken back to our country? How to tell the story. But what is a story if it's not doesn't teach you how to transcend it? I will shut up and let Harshit tell you more.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun dancing with you, Raghava. Breaking all sorts of binaries. But I do want to respond to the conversation around AI and art also. And I think, obviously, Patty has been the pioneer of artificial intelligence with software agent work in the 90s, right? And sort of building that through MIT, where it all started in some sense. And I had the privilege to go there and learn about these things. But what I realized after probably studying technology for a few years is that we're sort of missing having a poetic relationship with technology. And in today's times, we're so immersed in this environment, it's like almost the fish not realizing it's in water, right? We're so immersed in technology 24/7. I take away your phone for a day, I don't think you're going to survive, right? So, and we don't sort of sit back to take a moment and have an understanding of what change this is causing in our lives. How is this sort of shaping our reality today? And I think that's what I realized, that instead of running complex algorithms and seeing if the time duration of this is O to the power log n or on or whatever, can I instead forget that efficiency and instead think of poetry with technology? And that's where sort of with starting at the Media Lab, my journey began into exploring technology with art. And in terms of AI, I often say this, that the invention of cars does not automate the act of walking, right? And cars have been invented, cars exist for a lot of years now. It definitely causes infrastructural change, which means that the whole creative economy is going to evolve. But I think that humanity, artists always find a way to continue disrupting, and we will sort of move into spaces that continue creating new ways of engaging with the world. And AI to me is another lens of engaging with the world of what's happening today, because otherwise you're not going to sort of engage with technology in that meaningful manner. Works like, there's one work here called Masked Reality, which is about identity in the age of social media, etc., and how something like Indian ritual dances that have existed for so many years, can we offer a new lens of looking at them through technology? So technology becomes a medium of responding to the world, because there is no other way to respond to technology's influences to the world, right, than to use technology itself. And that's why I think it becomes important to use that in an artistic way.
Thank you. So we're just going to, in the interest of time, guys, we are, so Madeline, you're a Web 3.0 associate at the MoMA, working primarily on the intersection of art and technology. You produce and facilitate meaningful engagements with the art, including being part of the Lumen Prize for Art and Technology. So MoMA, since its inception in 1929, had continually redefined the idea of the museum in the contemporary culture. Turkish-American new media artist Rafik Andov's collection called Unsupervised, MoMA Seen Through the Eyes of Machine, was launched in November. See, what inspired an institution like MoMA to be one of the earlier players in the NFT space? And as you've just joined the team, how do you envision bringing curatorial, learning, engagement together through technology?
So that's a big question. I'll try to answer everything.
Are you saving the world?
I think first I'll say MoMA's foray into NFTs is new, including my new role, which is one of the first of its kind at a major museum institution. So while I can't speak from MoMA's perspective, I will, from the institutional perspective, I will offer my perspective on where I think institutions can play a role in Web3. I think one of the core areas is broadening and deepening engagement with the arts outside of the museum walls. So having these amazing possibilities in the Web3 interface and digital interfaces is a way to engage in a more global way and sort of oftentimes at the touch of a button. I also think that there is still very much an educational barrier for the everyday museum goer and visitor of an art experience. So I think institutions like MoMA can play a role in helping to lessen the gap between what's going on in Web3 and the context that people who are immersed in Web3 every day have versus the everyday museum goer. And finally, although there's so many possibilities and so much that's so exciting about Web3, but I'll leave it at one final note, which is I think that having Web3 initiatives in major institutions also allows those institutions to support artists, and in particular emerging artists, in ways that they were never really able to do so before, and in not only in broader ways, both in the physical realm but also the digital realm, and also in deeper ways where we can have hopefully phygital activations moving forward. So I think that there's this beautiful dance, to use your metaphor, between the physical and digital worlds, and that will only become a more elegant and more complex relationship as we move forwards.
Just to, you spoke about the education and the learning, and I was talking to Patty earlier. I thought this was really cool that, in July, MIT Platform Strategy Summit dropped a dynamic NFT called My Learning NFT, which was offered to participants who attended their course. And it was really cool. So if you don't do anything, that value of your NFT depreciates after you've gone through that course. And if you do something, it appreciates. So, maybe there's a role for NFTs in this evolved way we all learn and grow. And, I'm fantasizing with that for avid learning at some point in time, but yeah. So I'm just going to move on in the interest of time, because we want to take a few audience questions, or should we go for round two? But we're coming to Brian first. So Brian, you've earned a reputation as being a leading thinker on the burgeoning metaverse economy, consulting, advising many high-profile clients how to leverage their metaverse, their IPs in the metaverse. I mean, your background is stellar, from being a lawyer, I believe you started off as, right? Your CEO has, even in this crypto winter, has just launched a 50 million VC firm, Symbolic Capital, and I was just reading about your Polygon wallet. And Polygon supported NFT NYC, which was considered the Super Bowl of NFT events which happened. So what are some of the learnings that you can share about the future trends of NFT art? And what is Polygon's roadmap for supporting NFT artists from the global south, besides supporting this awesome Techni Disruptor show?
No, thank you for that. So for those in the audience who do not know, Polygon is actually an Indian-founded company. So yeah, woo! And we went from a ragtag group of rogue squadron, rebel alliance types who were beating the world. I think we had a team of 10, like not even 2 years ago, to a 600-person organization in that short period of time. So it's been quite a journey. I've been there for about a year, so I've seen about half of it. So that's the background on Polygon, being the fastest, most inexpensive, and most secure blockchain for an execution environment built on Ethereum. That might sound like gobbledygook to a lot of people in here, but that's the line right there. In terms of what we're doing to proliferate the creation of the open decentralized metaverse, that's providing the tools, the infrastructure for creatives, whether it's capital intensive or personnel intensive, or just navigating through our incredible ecosystem of creators to actually build these environments, whether it's decentralized applications, virtual worlds, content, and that spans from storytellers to artists to anyone who's really thinking about ways that they could disintermediate and disrupt traditional legacy power structures, particularly vis-a-vis the financing, production, and eventual distribution of creative assets, of course, art being at the center of that. So the sorts of applications that you will find on Polygon can be metaversal worlds, these immersive 3D environments that you live in, or it can be NFT marketplaces. And the vision that we have for the future is that all of this comes together in a seamless environment where the technology is simply under the hood and you don't have to interact with it in a frictioned way, right? Much the same way that it was very difficult for a Sprint user to text message a Verizon user, merely 20 years ago. We find that blockchain solutions will just simply be under the hood and you'll just be able to use them. No one needs to know what an SMTP server is to send an email, right? That's the vision that we have. And by working with large institutions, small creators, bringing them together to teach them about these platforms and these tools that are built on our platform, that is how we add to this decentralized future.
Your wallet is an example of that, right?
So the wallet is an interface for how you can interact with cryptocurrencies. Yeah.
So, Maina, two things. Should we open it to audience questions? Do I do another round?
Perhaps another round.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to stick with Brian. I mean, congratulations to you and Polygon for meeting your first sustainability targets. So, what is Polygon's plan of action to becoming carbon negative in the near future?
Carbon negative. So we are carbon neutral today, and I am not an ESG expert. We actually have a team of folks who handle that, so I may have imperfect information, but most of it is... We have our Green Manifesto, that is correct. You can check that out online, Green Manifesto, Polygon, simple Google search. But with that, it stems from placing carbon credits on chain. That's a very esoteric topic that I am no sort of expert on, to donating capital to causes, to green ESG causes. So you can find that information at our Green Manifesto.
Now we're going back to Maina, since she's brought us all here. So Maina, why are you so bullish on NFTs and the Global South artists?
I thought the question stopped there.
No, we have to put her on the spot. After the work she's made us all do.
No, because it's truly disruptive. I mean, it just, the possibilities of the NFT are endless, and I think this exhibition is an example of that. We talked about the phygital before, especially in countries like South Asia. There is a deep concern right now and a deep suspicion of what technology could do to the artist that has spent years investing in handicrafts or the handmade. And the NFT is a space that people either join because they have FOMO, extreme FOMO. They don't know what, so everyone jumps into it and says, I'll create an NFT. Or there is this sort of fear of, technology taking over and what role does the artist have left. And outside of everything else that's happening in the digital space, art still stays art. It is about imagination, it's about what excites you cerebrally, what ignites your soul. And the NFT is just, it's also great that there is art to back the NFT, because right now we're going through this crypto winter, and the art really sort of adds this value base to NFTs. So it's something that everyone really needs to concentrate on. And for me, like I said, for years now, it's always been about the politics of representation, and the NFT space gives me a chance to kind of really play around in that space. So
to add to what you were saying, I had this question for Anand, and unfortunately he's not here and Kunal's bounced also. But most collectors and crypto investors are pouring into NFT spaces, but there's no historical data or any benchmarks or any learnings. So, I mean, are buyers buying NFTs for art's sake, or are they buying them for investment's sake? And I don't know who to ask that question to, because two of my candidates are missing, so I'm opening it up to the panel. Not you, Maina, the rest.
Okay. I was going to say I'd buy an NFT because it's beautiful. I mean, if you walk through the exhibition, and I'm sure all of you guys would buy NFTs, and I know Raghava would.
Raghava?
Harshit would as well. So they're both creators and collectors. So
start dancing again.
I mean, all this doesn't interest me because fuck the market. Here's an opportunity. No, really, shut up and listen. Because here's an opportunity to change the world, to change power structures. Art has gone from being, it's so backward facing. We need, post-World War II, we become stuck in this depressive narrative that has taken over the art world. We need a reinvention. We need to go from backward facing to forward facing, from anxiety creating to healing. We need to go from academic to relevant. We have a big way ahead of us. Screw the market. This is an opportunity to make art relevant once again, to be a part of our lives. And I think anything that changes us, the word is change. I don't know how many times people said disrupt, change, grow. All these are metaphors for three simultaneous emotions: loss, liberation, and mystery at the same time. And you're going to have fear because it's loss, And you're going to have fear because you can be anyone you want to be. And you're also going to have fear because you have no clue who you're going to become. And only when you embrace all three, we need a spiritual, aesthetic practice in NFTs. And I promise you, 7 years ago, India wrote a thesis on it. Nobody in the West has read it because it came from India. We launched the world's first aesthetic on AI. Harshit was one of our artists. We launched 9 and they're pioneers today. No one knows. India has answers for the middle space. We have answers for the non-binary world. And that is the metaverse, darling. And this is where we need to dance and play. And I think there's no stopping us now.
So, on that joyous note, shall we just take 2 questions? Yeah, please.
Some of my friends up there. Hopefully my voice may
Just
carry.
your name also.
Avantika Dang. I'm an investor in gender-based pieces in deep tech and frontier healthcare startups that are female-founded across different industries, so very relevant to be here. I didn't realize that it would only take 7 of you to have such a diverse diaspora on stage. So first of all, congratulations.
It's all mine now.
Gender, ethnic, color, you name it. It just took 7 of you to make that happen. A thought, it's more of a thought than a question, but I know you guys, I'm going to leave you with it, with the idea that 7 of you can execute and bring it back to us. AI as artificial intelligence, should it be rephrased and rebranded to everything each one of you have said to authentic intelligence rather than artificial intelligence? If it's truly going to become a part of us, and if all it's doing is joining the dots to make everything happen, what about the ideology of making it authentic intelligence rather than artificial?
The problem with the word authentic, Avantika, is what do you want to stay authentic to? To you, an idea, a situation, right by what? By you, me, the place? This is the site of judgment that is confusing. And the Western world looks at it in a binary sense. I think what we really need is the emergence of new middle grounds and not a unified theories. We don't need a unified solution to everything. We need to see fractals. Every encounter should be divine. You are divine, darling. When I met you 20 years ago, you were crazy.
Has she changed?
Not a bit, I hope. But that is divine.
I also quickly want to add to that. I think this is a very beautiful discussion of what happens when you have a technology, suddenly AI, that has the power to process tons of data and then in some ways create a universal understanding of something that possibly is too abstract for any of us to think of in a collective manner, right? And that becomes this mirror to a collection. And that's something that is beautiful to have access to, but in no way removes or erases any individual's understanding of anything, right? And I think that both of these things, for them to be able to coexist now, I think that is beautiful. And I think that's the way we should just continue building on this, to say that we have this possibility, but we also acknowledge this possibility in the realm of individuality, right? And in some ways, technology companies, we've all probably worked in technology companies at some point, but they benefit from this idea of whitewashing or sort of just painting everything with one color, right? Based on this universal capability of data processing. And that is where we can build alternates to say that, how do you celebrate individuality even though there is the possibility of collective understanding? So, yeah.
I think in the interest of happy hour ending soon, I think we should wrap. But I'm just going to start with one last quick rapid fire, 1-word answer. Techni disruptors. Brian, 1 word.
I was not prepared for that. I'll go beautiful, beautiful.
It has to go in order.
Original.
Mina, you're not getting a chance.
Tough question. Thought-provoking?
That is. It has a dash, so I think that's.
Hyphenate. Come on.
Hyphenated.
Important, essential.
Mr. Dancer, last one for you.
Transcendent.
Wonderful. I'd like to thank this panel for their insights. And, Maina, next time you put such a panel together, I want a full day symposium. This 1 hour, 15 minutes, I feel cheated. I have so many more questions. But anyway, well, thank you. We have many of the artists from the show present here today. Seema Kohli, Veer Munshi, Harshit, Raga, so many. So please go talk to them, see their work, understand it. Thank you to all our partners, I have to announce this, and collaborators, JLF, Avid Learning, Polygon Studios, Infinite Objects, Highline 9 Gallery, Abris NFT, Tagmore. The show will go on till the 30th and be rotated in 3 editions, so please keep coming back. JLF New York, please check out the schedule of events at various locations tomorrow, and also the Power Pack sessions at Asia Society on the 14th. I will be moderating a session on digital entrepreneurship, innovation in the cyber future at 5 o'clock on the 14th. So please be there in case you like this one. We look forward to seeing you back here on the 14th for the closing night of JLF. There will be a brief conversation with Seema Kohli, a launch of a book, and an address by Shazia Ilmi, an NFT drop by South Asia's New York Fashion Week headliner and star designer Naomi Ansari, and much more. So thank you all for being here, and have a wonderful rest of the evening.